Well, hello out there in podcast land, and welcome back to Guilty Pleasures, the show where we celebrate the movies we love despite what critics, public opinion, or even our own God-given sense might tell us. I am your host, Lou Hare, for the Front Row Network, and we're back. It's May. We are back from our hiatus and coming at you with a whole fresh slate of shows, and I am thrilled to be back with you to... I'm not thrilled that we watched this movie. I'm not going to lie, but I'm thrilled to be back with my guests. This was a Twitter poll that we put up a couple of weeks ago. We decided to go video game themed. Rampage came out last month. It did pretty well. Surprisingly well for a video game adaptation. The reviews were good.
You sound shocked.
By comparison. Well, the reason I'm shocked is because video game movies don't have a great track record. So, and as exemplified by our movie today that we are here to talk about, and that is the original, the very first video game adaptation, 1993's Super Mario Brothers. A tight race on the Twitter poll. It barely won. In fact, it tied on Twitter, and so we had to go to Facebook to break the tie, and finally, this barely won out over Mortal Kombat.
Decidedly better movie.
A decidedly better movie.
If nothing but for the soundtrack.
Yes. So,
like, dude, if I was gonna do cocaine for the first time, it would be the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. I'm not.
You just do a line of it, and it's like Mortal Kombat. Oh. So as you can tell, I am not alone here on the podcast. The first voice you heard there was a regular to Guilty Pleasures. Please welcome back from all the way from California, Christian Krauspe. How you doing, Christian?
I'm doing pretty good, Lou. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for coming back. And a new guest to the Front Row Network. When I knew we were doing a video game movie, I had to get this guy. He's a good buddy of mine. He is one of the co-owners of the Analog Arcade Bar in Davenport, Iowa. Please welcome to the show, Kyle Carter. How you doing, Kyle?
Glad to be here.
Thank you. All right. So we have a tradition. Anytime we bring somebody onto the podcast for the first time, we ask them the question, what is your favorite movie?
Well, you know what? I still love Mallrats, and that, I mean, I have a lot, like everybody. It's like depends on the day and the mood, but I still, I love Mallrats. I just saw Kevin Smith live at the Codfish Hollow Barn the other day, and he was amazing.
Cool, good. He's feeling good.
Yeah,
look
good. Post heart attack, guy's like he's a new man.
Good.
It's genuinely funny too. It's good.
Yeah. Well, glad to hear it. So, like we said, we if this is the first time you're listening to Guilty Pleasures, we oftentimes go to you, the listener, to choose our movie. So before we get to diving deep into Super Mario Brothers, I want to give you a little bit of a heads up on what we are doing later this month on Twitter for our June episode. I'm going to get this right out of the way so you can hear this now in case you choose to tune out at the end of the podcast. May is a special month for TV fans. It is the 25th anniversary of the finale to the show Cheers, which is my favorite show, one of my favorite sitcoms and one of my favorite finales. So we decided that this month's theme would honor Cheers by looking at some of the films of the stars from that show. Some of them went on and had some success in films. A lot of them didn't and just went back to TV. So we're going to take a look at this for our June episode. So this poll is going to come out on Monday on Twitter at Front Row Reviews. So your first choice is Sam Malone himself, Ted Danson, the star of Cheers, had himself a very successful little movie called Three Men and a Baby, 1987. Steve Guttenberg, Tom Selleck. We're going to put that up on the poll.
In the Ghost, there's a ghost in that. Isn't there like a dead guy in that movie too?
Yes, there's an urban legend, which we will definitely talk about if it wins the poll. And yes, if it wins the poll, we're also going to talk about Three Men and a Little Lady. Option number 2, his first love interest. on Cheers. Diane Chambers, played by Shelley Long. We're going to look at one of her movies. We're going to look at 1986's The Money Pit, starring her and Tom Hanks. Now, I hear people breaking glass already. Why aren't you doing Troop Beverly Hills? We are going to do Troop Beverly Hills, but we're not going to put that on a poll. It would win, and I want to do it anyway. So, but we're going to save that for its 30th anniversary early next year. So instead, we're putting The Money Pit on to represent Shelley Long. Ted Danson's second love interest on the show, Rebecca Howe, played by Kirstie Alley. She had herself a franchise as well, and that would be the Look Who's Talking franchise, starting with 1989's Look Who's Talking, her, John Travolta, and Bruce Willis as a talking baby.
Fuck yeah.
So we're going to put that one up on the poll. And yes, of course, we will talk about Look Who's Talking too if Look Who's Talking wins. I can't guarantee you're going to get me to sit through Look Who's Talking now. I love you guys, but Talking Dogs may be where I draw the line. And finally, Dr. Fraser Crane, the beloved television staple played by Kelsey Grammer. He attempted a film career too in 1995's Down Periscope, which is, if you have not seen this movie, it's probably the least known of the four that we've got on here, but I recommend that you give it a look and just look at the cast list for this. It's kind of a who's who of character actors. Rip Torn is in it. Lauren Holly, Harry Dean Stanton is in it. It's a weird little movie, but we're going to put it up on the poll as well. So as I mentioned, those four choices are going to go up this Monday on Twitter, and that will be our June episode. So with that out of the way, let's get to this month's episode of Super Mario Brothers. The plot summary here, and I tried to keep it short and sweet because I think we got a lot to get into. When two New York plumbers enter a parallel dimension, they find themselves battling its ruler for the fate of the universe. It stars Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, and Dennis Hopper. And this movie...
That's a punchline in itself. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And it was directed by a husband and wife team, Annabelle Jankel and Rocky Morton, who surprisingly have not done much else since this movie. Good. Yeah. So why are we talking about this on Guilty Pleasures, aside from the fact that you voted for it? Well, this movie made $20 million off of a $48 million budget. It was actually released this month. This month is the 25th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers. It comes out about 2 weeks before Jurassic Park, another movie with dinosaurs. Its Rotten Tomatoes score is 14%, and its IMDb score is 4. Out of 10, could be out of 20, and it'd still be a 4.
I feel like it's generous.
I think it might be. And that was interesting, too, because I did look up stuff about this. When doing research, there are some people who do have a nice little warm nostalgia vibe for this movie.
I don't get it.
I'm not one of them, because I didn't actually see this movie until it won the poll. So I don't have any first impressions of the movie. Christian, I believe you actually did see this movie when it came out, correct?
No, I did. I saw it in one of those mall movie theaters that no longer really exists, where there's like the 3-screen Cineplex inside of like a regular shopping mall. That, like, you know, most shopping malls don't really exist in their traditional sense anymore. And I remember, like, coming out of the theater, like, I had just read, like, a Kafka short story for the first time. Like, I wasn't really sure, like, who to trust, what I was feeling about myself existentially. And this is something that I think you guys have heard me mention about the movie and will probably hear me say again, is that it is troubling, it is disgusting, it is weird, and it is upsetting on many, 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 many different levels, aesthetically, narratively, altogether. But on the other side, I mean, I could totally Bobby the Brain Heenan this thing and be like, it's got a great ensemble cast. It pushes the limits of avant-garde filmmaking. It's got the best of both the video game and of 90s cinema. It's got literally a million thrills it's got 20 million thrills for the $20 million. But I'm not going to take that road because that would just be a lie.
Okay, so Kyle, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was because I know you are one of the biggest video game fans that I know. So I had kind of assumed you had seen this movie.
No, yeah. No, my parents, the reviews were so bad when it came out, and even the stuff that I read as a kid, like through magazines and stuff, was so negative that I didn't want to taint my perfect view of Mario Brothers. You know, I didn't want it to ruin my world, and I was okay with it at the time.
Man, that is some A+ parenting. I say this as a parent. Like when I look for movies, I try to just make sure like the content is okay. It's like I got to add that other level now of, okay, is this gonna like ruin my daughter's movie going experience? Will this like crush her soul? Which I should have thought of, because the last movie I took her to see was the Emoji Movie. Saw that bad boy in the theaters. And she really doesn't want to go to the movie theater anymore. And I blame TJ Miller.
So, it's just a god-awful movie.
It is
terrible.
It is.
I mean, it does. I mean, 25 years, it is not aged any better.
No,
by any stretch.
Well, what has aged really well is the lore of this movie. And that's what I think the fun part about this, getting ready for this podcast, was just kind of diving in to some of the history. So before we get into the movie itself, I want to give you just a little bit of backstory. And it starts at about 1990 with a producer by the name of Roland Joffe. Roland Joffe is the first person to really push for a Super Mario Brothers movie. Now, for those of you who don't know the name Roland Joffe, his biggest claim to fame up until that point was the 1984 film The Killing Fields.
Oh, yeah.
Which is about the Cambodian Civil War. So right off the bat, we're maybe not starting off with the best bona fides for your Nintendo adaptation. And then to write the first draft of the screenplay, he gets Barry Morrow, who wrote the first draft. Barry Morrow, his biggest claim to fame up to that point was the film Rain Man. So Super Mario Brothers, from the producer of The Killing Fields and the writer of Rain Man.
Being filmed with avant-garde flair, which, you know, you mentioned earlier, like why anyone thought that was a good fit for this particular genre is kind of a mystery.
Well, right, because the production design, which you mentioned, Christian, and I would agree. I think if there is one thing about this movie that we could point out that does work in the movie, is that the world that they create, while it is nothing like the Super Mario world, and we'll get to that, but they do bring in a production company that has some legit creds to it. They worked on Blade Runner, Terminator 2, the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. And those are all great movies, but they all have kind of one connective tissue to it, and that they're all pretty dark movies.
Right, but didn't they literally use those sets for this movie?
They did.
So did they really get credit for that if they just borrowed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? And like, does that count? Do you get points for just like showing up and being like, "Hey, Blade Runner left this behind. I guess we'll use it."
Fair point. That's fair. Well, and so that's where let's start there, because that's one of the first things that you notice about the movie is that, yeah, this is some weird attempt to make a darker version of Super Mario Brothers, which, if for all the problems with the movie, this is probably where it all starts, and you can't really come back from this. Because this world is set in a parallel dimension called Dino Hatton.
I forgot I had a name.
Fuck you. Movie. I'm sorry. Keep going.
So yeah, so and that's one of the things that boggles my mind about this movie is that you have at this point, fact check me on this, Kyle. By 1993, we had seen what 4 different Super Mario Brothers games.
At least 3, yeah.
I mean, the 3 Nintendo was Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I think Super Nintendo would have been. Yeah, you would have been on 4 by then, I think.
Okay, so you've got
because 92 was Super, I believe. Yeah. So 1993.
So you've got 4 video games to choose from. All of those games have 8 different worlds with multiple different settings in them. Themes, backdrops,
music.
Music. You have like 40 different templates to choose from. And you just say, fuck it.
We're going to use Blade Runner.
Yeah. Because what kids want to see isn't the video game that they've been playing ad nauseum for the past 5 years. They want dystopia.
Right.
They want dystopia. They want real plumbers solving real plumbing problems.
That's right. Yeah.
They want there to be some sort of they want there to be like real estate property right going on.
Can you expound on the actual plumbing stuff, because it pops up several times where there's like moments where it's like, oh, there's real plumbing happening here.
Well, like no, like in the climax of the movie, I believe Luigi has to solve or has to like plug a leak in order to let the girls of the harem of women that have been kidnapped escaped back into regular Manhattan. Not to mention that, but like tools are used to hurt people, like in the toboggan race when they're in the fucking weird frozen air conditioning system. Like he sticks a wrench in the thing so the Goombas flip over. There's like samurai swords in a family's house in feudal Japan are different types of wrenches in the Mario household, like up against the wall.
Yeah.
Let alone the whole parallel universe thing, which exists for no clear reason other than to include a real estate developer that they don't want to.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I can go with Mario and Luigi get sucked into a parallel universe because it at least gives you a reason for this some sort of fantastical world existing, right? Because that's what the world of Super Mario Brothers is. It's not, there's all of these creatures coming to life and there's all sorts of magical stuff happening, but none of that actually happens in this world. So they create a parallel universe and then take away like all of the magic that occurs in the game. Like there's no Super Mario Brothers, like Mario and Luigi, they never become super in the movie.
No.
Oh no, whatsoever. And what's the I think there's like a time count. What's the minute mark? It's like well over an hour into the movie before they put on those fucking suits, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
It's
and then there's like a handful of references like Bullet Bill. The mushroom thing is way too literal. Like that's just weird. And,
right. Okay. So you bring that up and I'm going to give you, I think we all have certain theories on this movie and I want to give you mine because I think that this will bring up some different points we want to make. I believe that the producers of this film had some deep shit going on with their kids because like their kids played Mario so much that they became like kind of bitter and hostile to them. And they said, okay, we're going to make a Mario movie and we're going to put things about it that you recognize. And then we're going to completely fuck it over because every time there's a little glimmer, like you mentioned, there's a little glimmer of the Mario we know and love.
Yeah, like Bob-omb or something.
It goes away almost immediately. Like the first 5 seconds of the movie starts with the theme song. You hear that, and you're all of a sudden it's like, oh, that this could be fun, and you don't hear it again for the rest of the movie. Not any references to any of the music. You see, like Mario talks about, let's hit the bricks. They never actually hit any bricks. You see Yoshi, and 5 minutes later, he gets stabbed in the fucking throat.
Jugular, I believe.
Right in the jugular. Like, he's shivved. Like, you take the cutest character, and you stab him.
and a string of women being kidnapped from the streets of Brooklyn. Like there's like harrowing things going on. Not to mention that like it introduces concepts of like urban revolt.
Yeah.
And some deeply disturbing sexuality that has no business being in the movie.
Yeah.
You know?
like Mario going cleave diving into Big Bertha.
Yeah.
He
wants that stone. It's his lucky day, my man.
Hey kids, you like Mario? How would you like to see him motorboat a chick?
And Mario isn't even the lead character. Luigi is largely the plot driver of the movie.
Well, I feel like he's probably the larger plot driver of the movie because he was the one that could handle his liquor the best, or like the one that they could get to show up on set because he was the younger, pluckier actor. Where Bob Hoskins was just like, just putting a round in a chamber, spinning it, playing Russian roulette.
No bullet today. Better go to the set.
What's the actor that plays the bad guy?
Dennis Hopper, dude.
Dennis Hopper.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to get mad at you. It's
all right. So Dennis Hopper, apparently, from what I've read, was like fucking miserable throughout this entire thing. Berates the directors of just like, what is this hot garbage I'm in? And I mean, could you blame the guy if you're like living this? Did you show up on set? You realize you're on the Blade Runner set. You see a Goomba that is truly terrifying, and you're like, fuck, like this is bad. This is all downhill from here. And yeah,
there's a great story. If Google, go to The Guardian, they have a great story about the making of this, and it's led with a story of Dennis Hopper being unhappy with one of the lines and going on a 2-hour tirade through the lunch break, just making everybody miserable. And then when he finally calms down, he just does the line as it's written.
Yeah, I mean, that's Dennis Hopper is just such a weird guy. I'm guessing weird character actor, weird everything. Nothing about that behavior surprises me whatsoever. The thing that I would be more surprised, or I suppose less surprised, if it was like a 4-hour rant. And then he's the one that insisted on stabbing Yoshi.
We'll never know.
That's how they covered it up. At some point, they're like, "Guys, someone stabbed Yoshi. All right, put it in the movie. We can't fix the hole. It's the knife stuck in there." Yeah, no, everybody was miserable.
The Mushroom Kingdom thing. I mean, hey, Dennis Hopper, go talk to this like sludge that is like falling from the ceiling. But trust us, it's supposed to be a guy, but he's in mushroom form.
Right.
It's really Lance Henriksen.
As we all remember from the video game,
right.
Who doesn't remember that great world where you have to talk to a slime being?
I still think the biggest, despite how just screwed up and dark the whole thing is, the plot hole in this thing is gigantic. A whole thing is based on, oh my God, Koopa and all his bad people are going to come through the portal to Earth, to the real world. And we have to stop that from happening. Meanwhile, people have apparently already traveled through this, as evidenced by the very beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. And so what's the point? Like, you couldn't he have just like walked through to the other dimension to begin with?
Pretty much at any time. And more to your point too, Koopa's big thing is we want our world to meld with yours. And Mario and Luigi are intent on stopping it. Meanwhile, they're seeing how shitty this world is.
Right.
I'm like, they don't have water. And it's all of a sudden it's like, why don't you just let them come up? Right?
Yeah. That's the end game for the both of them of like, okay, well, we need to merge with Earth's world because they have resources which we can exploit, which we no longer have.
Mm-hmm.
We desperately need because our people are dying.
Right.
They're basically Mario refugees.
The thing is, we can't let them in because they're gross dinosaur people that that's really all I got.
This is such a weird take on the refugee crisis in America.
And then in the end, even after all this is settled, the princess still shows up at the very end, clearly still capable of moving between both worlds with, I think, a gun.
A gun, yeah.
And like,
as we all remember from the Mario franchise. Guns.
Yeah. Encouraging them to come back to the dystopian world because apparently she's the only one who is aware of how to move through this doorway.
Well, yes. No, because and she's apparently the only one, and apparently the world is still shitty. Right. So because now there's something new that's like taken over. And again, all of that speaks to, especially once Koopa's dead. Like I could maybe go with, okay, well, we don't want Koopa and his army coming up to the Earth because they're going to destroy it. I get that. But once Koopa and his army is destroyed, you're still sitting on a civilization that has zero natural resources. And you're just like, hey, catch you later. Glad we could help. And you just...
I guess too is what the movie plants in your head is that things will be okay once Lance Henriksen is restored as king because of leadership. Like somehow that will put bread in the stomach of those that because they now have an absolute monarchy,
right? Yeah, it's just this long analogy for the Gulf War. They've taken out Saddam, and now they're just getting the fuck out and leaving these people with no resources.
And I think you touched on it a little bit. Is they can move between worlds. They just can't. They can only move like 2 by 2, like 2 abreast in between the rock like vortex thing. They just can't move massive amounts of people. Like that's the only thing holding them.
And you know how you solve that plot hole?
A line?
One line, not even just referencing the game on which your movie is based, because how do you go from world to world in Mario?
Tubes. Yeah.
Create a fucking tube. That's all you have to do, because if the tube's not big enough, only 1 or 2 people could go through at a time anyway, right?
Right.
Now, instead, you create this giant hole that doesn't exist, still isn't canon from the games. So there's no line there. And you're right. Everybody could just go back and forth, just create and it makes sense because they're fucking plumbers.
Yeah. But just think how many just Mario themes they could have used in this movie, or characters or concepts that they just were like, nah, we're good. And then the ones that they do use, they use in the let's talk Toad. That's pretty fucked up. Yeah.
Let's talk the Dylan-esque folk song Toad.
Yeah, keep going. That you just jogged it loose in my memory.
Yeah, no. So you have this, you basically have, he looks like the naked cowboy from Times Square, just clothed, walking around singing a song about how Dino Hatton doesn't have water. Again, a legitimate political concern. And that, they're living in this dystopia. And he comes in, and first of all, he looks nothing like what Toad looks like in the video game. And then he gets de-evolved. Right. And you think, oh, this is what's going to turn him into Toad from the game. No, he just looks like a fucking lizard.
Yeah, he's just a Goomba at that point, which are disturbing in their own right. And the whole just design of the costume of them is just freaky.
Right.
Things with large bodies and small heads are very terrifying. So, not to mention when you have an army of them all dancing in unison together.
Oh, in the elevator? I forgot about that.
Yeah, they all jam together with music and the elevator because that's how fucking Mario and Luigi, that's their diversion that they create, is by getting them to sway back and forth to the elevator music, and that's how they are able to escape, which I've seen fucking lazy writing before, but oh man, that's pretty
well
bad.
then the only tube that they incorporate into the whole movie is the race. I think you mentioned it earlier or whatever, where they're sliding down with all of the women from New Jersey. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you refresh my memory, MS?
Yeah, we call them bridge and tunnel trash, but whatever you do.
Yeah. Which again, no reference to the game. Not like still, it's just this. It's all of the action sequences. Again, they just every conceivable time they could have done something that resembled something. They just don't do it. Like there's that scene which has nothing to do. There's a car chase scene.
I forgot
for no real reason.
Technically one of the better scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually quite a depthly film sequence.
So, and then they go to the desert, and you're like, "Oh, this will be like the desert world,
right?"
And you'll
every time you're just like, "Here it is."
Yeah. You just like there's this little hope. It's like, "Oh, this is where." Nope.
And what are those other two?
Stevens.
That's what are those other two characters that are the henchmen or whatever?
The Koopa cousins.
And they're supposed to be like the Super Nintendo, like the kids of Koopa, right? Like
yes, they are
and
Iggy and Spike.
Iggy and Spike, that's right.
My favorite characters in the film.
They were actually the only two who actually, I think they're the only two who actually gave a shit because they were allowed to improvise most of their lines.
Yeah. I mean, if you have Fisher Stevens on set, you let Fisher Stevens do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He was in Short Circuit and Hackers. You let the guy do what he wants.
Yeah.
So this basically, it just ended most of their careers or what? Like what happened after this?
For them, and some came out better than others. This is, I think John Leguizamo gets one more starring role later in his career. He gets to do Tu Wong Fu. And Bob Hoskins still, he goes on and he still has a pretty decent career as a character actor. This is the last time he's a leading man because this is like the second or third attempt after Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
That's a great movie.
It's a great movie. So great that Bob Hoskins decided to use the exact same accent for this movie, which again makes Mario this like grizzled Brooklyn plumber as opposed to like the happy smiley Mario. But anyway, Dennis Hopper, he's fine. This comes out the same year as Speed, so he's okay. But really the careers that get killed are the people behind the scenes. It's the directors, the writers, the producers, and the Nintendo franchise. Because this is the last attempt. This is the only attempt at a Nintendo an adaptation of a Nintendo game.
It speaks volumes. The fact that Nintendo to this day in 2018 has never farmed out the license to their product again. That's a bad movie, man. You got to be like extra bad for that to happen. And think of all the money they could have made off of Zelda or other Mario games or Mega Man or Metroid. They're just like, nah, we saw what happened in the 90s. We're not going to do that again. Like the Japanese people just collectively decided, never again, America. Never.
Can I ask, as the video game expert, do you think that part of the making of this movie was hubris in the sense that, like, listen, it's the early 90s. We're Nintendo. We can do whatever we want.
It had to be. I mean, what else would have driven them to do something so bizarre? Other than, like you said, pure hubris of like, we can't do no wrong. Except that, I mean, maybe had Turtles come out already prior to this?
Yeah, Ninja Turtles came out in 1990.
Okay,
and that's why
that movie was pretty fucking dark. I mean, Raphael does consider suicide at one point.
Right.
It is.
Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds.
Man. Yeah, and this is honestly maybe I think it could be. I think you're onto something where maybe this could be just a timing issue as well because. You had Batman in 1989, you had Ninja Turtles in 90, and the year before it, you had Batman Returns, which is as super dark, as dark as you can, like so dark, like they went in a completely different direction for Batman Forever, which you can find in our archives at Guilty Pleasures. But yeah, I think they were like, oh, well, these are the kind of movies that are selling these darker takes on it. But what they forgot was that the source material of both Ninja Turtles and Batman was
darker to begin with.
Right. As opposed to this, which is...
Even Turtles had it, even in the cartoon form of it,
right?
It had a darker edge to it than, I mean, anything that Nintendo ever did.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't even know if you could say that they went darker with this movie. They just went in a more unsettling way. I mean, yes, it's dark. It is gritty. It is, yes, for all intents and purposes, it is darker. But it's just so many off choices, like Dennis Hopper's weird thing in the mud bath, his style, the fact that everything is covered in a fungus, the way that the cars are attached to electricity wires hanging above the city for no apparent reason, like the way that the trash is constantly blowing even though there's wind underneath. Like, it's just, there's something, it's a picture that is just not hanging correctly. And, well, actually, it's not hanging correctly. It's fucking to the side. But yeah, that's how I would kind of characterize it. Not necessarily dark, but just very askew in its execution.
No, I think you're right there. And yeah, because part of that has to do with the fact that there were conflicting forces behind the scenes of this movie. There were people who wanted it to be more lighter and kid friendly, and then there were some who wanted to go dark. And so I think that's why you get this kind of in the middle thing where it's not so dark that it's like this mind-blowing universe, and it's not light enough to be a semblance of what you remember. It's just, but I want to go back to the scene that you mentioned earlier, because somebody somewhere thought they were onto something, because the scene they do the Back to the Future 2 ending where Daisy comes back and says, "You got to come back with me." Yeah. Right. Like, instead of the "to be continued," it's just Super Mario Brothers. Like, who had the balls to pitch that scene knowing that this movie was not going well, but they're like, "Hey guys, trust me. Sequel. 100%. Lock it down. Put a cliffhanger on it, because we're coming back to this."
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Was there a Super Mario Brothers 2 video game? Then there's going to be a Super Mario Brothers 2 movie. Guaranteed.
Man.
Yeah. But of course, it's not to be. No one sees this movie. It doesn't go. It's not well received by anybody who's even participated in it. Bob Hoskins has in the past come out against this movie, or in post interviews, he said it was one of the biggest mistakes he ever did. He and John Leguizamo admit that they were both drunk during filming of this. And there's a great story in the Guardian article about everybody, while they're making this, pretty much knew this movie was a wreck, because they kept rewriting it. They had at some point, this script was touched by about 6 different screenwriters, and everybody on the crew knew it was a mess. And so everybody's just getting like wasted and stoned out of their minds. And Bob Hoskins has his own like mansion that he's staying at, and everybody thinks he's like this recluse. And then one day he comes to the set, or somebody was talking about getting high, and the guy, and he says, you guys have reefer? Why didn't you tell me? And apparently he just starts hanging out with the cast and crew and getting blazed for the rest of this shoot.
You have to, almost. I mean,
is he knighted? Did we ever figure this out? Is he Sir Bob Hoskins?
We can fact check that. I believe he was at some point. I mean, if Michael Caine can get knighted, I think. I mean, but Michael Caine will show up to anything. So,
I don't believe that he is. I'm sorry, I just checked.
Okay.
Never mind. Forget that.
Okay, so what other scenes? Is there anything else that stands out from in particular? Because I think we jumped around a bit, but I think we've covered a lot of the big ones. I want to make sure we don't miss anything here.
There's just so much disturbing about it. I think we covered the vast majority of it, but there were lots of just little scenes where you're just like, why? Why would you make that decision? The fungus thing is one of the weirdest ones. The Mushroom King. Like, that's just
the fungus is trying to help you. The fungus as a device, as a storytelling device of like your guiding hand is as Gandalf. Like is really, 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 really. So
Gandalf the fungus.
I mean, if you compare these characters to their like greater Joseph Campbell like counterparts, like Daisy is Harry Potter / Jesus, is Gandalf, or like John the Baptist. Like the comparisons that this movie has to make as far as like the hero's journey are pretty fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
And it's all because Luigi just wanted to get laid.
All because.
And yeah, if Samantha Morton, or like, listen, if for all intents and purposes, if she just would have been a little bit easier, we wouldn't have run into this.
Hey, she was focused on trying to. What was she focused? What was she doing?
Her grad career. She was in grad school.
Grad school, yes.
For excavation in fucking Brooklyn.
Because everyone knows that's where you find.
That's where you find the Velociraptor skeleton is in fucking Astoria.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm glad you brought up Brooklyn, because the bookends to this movie, well, like the plot devices that get them into the world is this convoluted plot of Mario and Luigi being driven out of business by a rival plumbing company.
Scarpelli, or some Italian name. Italian bad guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
TM.
Yeah, exactly. And which is hilarious when you consider that like Mario and Luigi in general are Italian stereotypes, and they kind of like de-stereotype them for the movie because they don't have like any accents, or Hoskins is sounding like a grizzled 30s detective or whatever. But then you get this real estate developer, or this plumber, whatever. I don't even remember what he does now.
He's a real estate developer / excavator / plumber.
Okay.
Plumber, like he's the white collar plumber franchise that's taking all of their plumbing work.
Right. Who later on, when the worlds start merging, gets devolved into a monkey.
Right. And no one seems to mind.
And like, yeah, no one in New York is plussed by this at all.
It's like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Let's
move on.
Right. And there's like some sort of write up at the end where they shoehorn in the term Super Mario Brothers on the news, but like no one is concerned that like, hey guys, did we just all see a fucking dinosaur?
Yeah.
Or what happened? And by the way, the Twin Towers also blew up in this movie.
I forgot about that. After they shivved Yoshi.
After they shiv Yoshi and they blow up the Twin Towers. It gets shot with one of the ray guns that they use, right, which is just a super scope,
right,
that has been painted.
Oh my god, that's right. What the fuck?
Further confirming the Super Nintendo era, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And Yoshi's existence.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Good God.
So okay, I'm glad we did manage to get to that, because I do remember watching them hit the towers and thinking, oh, that doesn't age well.
No.
Okay, so is there anything about the movie that actually, we talked about a little bit at the production design at the beginning. Is there anything that we at least can appreciate about this movie? Christian, you got anything?
I mean, I guess in the sense that like it swings. It swings and misses, but man, oh man, does it whiff hard. I mean, like it seems that no expense was spared on the dumbest shit possible. Like there's not like it's not like Plan 9 from Outer Space where you can see boom mics in it in like certain frames and like cardboard cutouts are falling over. Like there's a lot of production value that went into this. Like. And it all looks really, really, really good. And the actors, for all the shitty dialogue that they have to deliver, really do commit. There are several moments, especially Dennis Hopper, I think I've mentioned maybe earlier to you, Lou, is when he's posing as their lawyer and they don't know that he's Koopa. He's got this really like intense, menacing monologue about like, I don't think you boys know who you're messing with at all. And it's like it is pretty unnerving. And Bob Hoskins plays a hero and commits to being a hero. So with all that said, yeah, I mean, I think that's worth probably appreciating.
Kyle, how about you?
I mean, I agree with that, but I don't have anything else to add to it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, for like all the stories that we hear about how miserable these guys were, you wouldn't know it by watching it. I don't think you could accuse anybody on screen of phoning it in necessarily. They just are they're almost non-factors because they're just all like kind of swallowed up by bad idea after bad idea. You know, and they're just surrounded by a movie that just none of this works. And so it's not the fault of any of them. And they're actually, I think, cast fairly well. I mean, I'm not the world's biggest John Leguizamo fan, but he does fine in it. Bob Hoskins is a great actor. There's no doubt about that. He's just not given much to do, which is weird because he's
Mario.
Yes, he's Mario.
Oh yeah, Mario and Luigi Mario.
Yeah, I mean he's no Captain Lou Albano, but but he'll do. So I bring up the actors because there were a couple of other people who were considered for this. One of the earlier considerations for Mario was Danny DeVito, which makes a ton of sense. Another one who doesn't make a lot of sense, somebody who's actually really interested in being in this movie in either role, was Tom Hanks.
Ooh. Good thing he dodged that bullet.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, Nintendo was worried at the time because he had just come off of Turner and Hooch and Joe versus the Volcano, which were not big hits, and they were like, "Oh, we don't want Tom Hanks to taint our brand."
Oh, that's rich.
Mm-hmm. And then the most recent story that came out about potential casting for the role of Mario was Cheech from Cheech and Chong.
Yes, right.
He actually mentioned, and I started thinking, and I was like, they just missed the boat completely, because I can't get down with, if you're not going to do an authentic Mario, if you're not going to like make it stick to the canon and a faithful stuff makes all the more sense. And it's just make like an adult, like some weird trippy ass adult version of Super Mario Brothers starring Cheech and Chong.
The plot is just them on a bad trip, basically.
Yeah. I was about to do a Cheech impression, and then I stopped myself because I don't want to get letters. But yeah. So, and then the final one, the role of King Koopa, which ended up going to Dennis Hopper, was originally offered to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So that would have been an improvement for me, I think.
That actually, that probably would have been pretty good too.
Yeah, I could see that working completely. And before they settled on this pairing, this husband-wife pairing, the offer to which, again, I think if you had gotten Harry, we would have gotten a much lighter tone or a more comedic take on this that would have been more in line, I think, with what we all would have expected out of this.
Yeah.
So now we mentioned that Nintendo has not attempted to adapt any of their films, but there was news in November of 2017 that there is going to be a new attempt at a Super Mario Brothers movie. But it's going to be an animated feature done by Illumination, who is responsible for the Despicable Me franchise.
That makes way more sense. And Mario being animated in general just makes more sense. That'd be interesting, though. That could be good. We'll see.
Yeah.
Filling it with like great care, though. I would imagine Nintendo is just like breathing down their neck.
They have to be. They have to be just. All right, guys, we did this once before. It didn't go well. We are not like
we are not using the set of Blade Runner. I don't care how available it is.
Nintendo's like a battered girlfriend, like just ready to get back into a relationship. All right, I'm gonna let you stay the night, but we don't spoon because.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So let's put a bow on this one, and let's take this to our guilt meter, which is our rating system here on Guilty Pleasures, on a scale of 1 to 5 shame spirals. 1 being, I love this movie. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I want other people to see it. I'd host screenings if I had to make sure everyone could see this movie. 5 being, I either don't like this movie, if I do, my basement. Where does Super Mario Brothers rank on the guilt meter? Let's start with Christian.
I'd have to say 4. Like, it's not. If somebody caught me watching it, I'd be like, yeah, it's that Super Mario Brothers movie, but I'm not gonna like have to take like a rape shower afterwards. I'm not gonna. It's not like that bad, but I'd say it's pretty. It's up there. I'd have to say a 4.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Yeah, it's certainly not the worst movie I've ever seen. But at the same time, it's not. I couldn't recommend somebody to watch this. I would more dare someone to watch this.
Yeah,
I would say, "Oh, you like Super Mario Brothers? Well, good luck with that, pal. Check that out. I'm gonna go watch Mortal Kombat instead." But that being said, yeah, I there is a little bit there for people to check out, if nothing else but a cautionary tale. So I think I would go a 4. Kyle, how about you?
Solid blasphemous 5. Just hot flaming garbage. Disservice to the industry. Ruined an entire franchise from having awesome movies that we should have enjoyed by now. Fuck that thing. It's garbage. It's terrible.
All right. So, okay, so that's going to do it for this episode of Guilty Pleasures. Before we wrap up, Kyle, wanted to give you the opportunity. Tell us a little bit about Analog.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're, Analog opened in October 2015 in downtown Davenport, and it's been going really well. We've had tons of games come and go, and the community's really supported it. It's been fun. I'm really excited this summer about pulling a new indie game called Cosmotrons. That the indie arcade scene is kind of a weird underground thing, and this is a game that I think people will really like. So I'm pretty stoked to be bringing that and just kind of building around that whole idea that there is still new stuff in addition to the old stuff, and there's always pinball, and you can't go wrong with
it. You now have my new favorite pinball game, which is the WWF Royal Rumble
Oh, yeah.
pinball. Oh,
Yeah. The call outs on that are great.
They're fantastic.
Hey,
My daughter's not going to go to college because of that game.
It's fun, man. Like, there's a good theme goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Like Super Mario Brothers.
If you could,
right?
if you could just stick to it. And I guess because this is also a movie podcast, I want to get your thoughts really quick on the fall of one of my favorite movie villains of all time, Billy Mitchell.
Oh, man. Man. Yeah, I know. Pearl Clutch, like, you know, technically, you know, there's still, you know, Billy has basically come back and said, hey, I can prove everything. So I'm waiting with bated breath to see the return fire from Billy. What was blew up, you know, allegedly cheated on all his scores, and he had to do a meet and greet at MGC that next day. And that guy has got balls of steel, man. He walked in there and he's just like, hey, like nothing ever happened. Like that's impressive. I gotta give him credit for that. He's just doing the photo op, like just killing the game. And that takes balls, man. That's good.
USA, baby. No,
right.
Billy Mitchell.
Oh, God bless him.
So we'll see. You know, the story is not over yet.
Hey, we got to get that King of Kong sequel somehow.
Right. Right.
All right. Well, great. Yeah. No. If you are in the Quad Cities area, you definitely need to check out Analog. It's been a great place to go to. It's one of my frequent hangs. It's definitely worth the trip. For those of you who are listening in the Springfield area, come up to the Quad Cities. Sometimes we will. Let me know. I'll buy you a beer. We'll play some Royal Rumble pinball.
Yeah. If you want another good movie along the lines of like King of Kong, it's actually better in some ways. Man versus Snake. If you've heard of that,
I've heard of that. Yeah, that's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It's actually very good. And the guy that is the main dude in that documentary lives in Iowa. Really nice guy. His name's Tim, and he called Nibbler. People are familiar with, but you know, like the opening scene, like there's a guy that basically looks in the camera. He's like, "What the fuck is Nibbler?" And I'm like, "That's a great way to like get the point across." But yeah, you should definitely check that movie out. It's King of Kong like, but Tim is much more likable.
I'm just glad you said that and you didn't say. Great. You know, it's a great video game movie, Pixels.
Well, I have not seen Pixels yet, but it can't possibly be worse than Mario Brothers.
I might agree with you on that. I don't know. All right, Christian, how about you? You got anything you want to plug?
You can follow me on Twitter at Lapsed Christian, all one word, lapsed, like Lapsed Christian, get it? Because that's when funny Twitter names were being created and used, so that's what mine is. Yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome. And speaking of funny Twitter names, you can find me on Twitter at @TheFakeLouHair. And you can follow the network at Front Row Reviews, where you can find our Twitter poll coming up this Monday, honoring Cheers and its cast. We've got some great options for you. We hope that you check that out. And we also hope, if this is your first time listening to a show by the Front Row Network, we hope you explore all of our shows. We've got a ton of content coming out. The guys just dropped their review of Infinity War, which I have not listened to yet because I haven't seen the movie and I don't want to get spoiled. But go check that out. There's a lot of cool stuff coming. All the summer movies are going to get covered. I know Craig is doing his Disney podcast, Beyond the Mouse, which I'm actually going to be on because this month they are going to break down the Disney bracket that broke the internet last month. So they're going to give their take on it, and I'm going to be there with them. But everything else you can go find on our website, frontrowmoviereviews.com, or our Facebook page and or our YouTube page. So go to all of those things, but definitely make sure if you're listening to us on whatever podcast device, you subscribe to the show, rate, review us. It really helps expose the people to this show and all this crazy stuff where we talk about fun movies. So check all that out. We got a lot of great stuff coming up. But in the meantime, for the Front Row Network, I'm Lou Hare.
Kyle Carter.
Christian Krauspe.
And as always, we'll see you in the front row.
Got her?
It says it's stopping.
I'm still reading live.
Yeah, it says live up in the corner. In the bottom, it says it's stopping. Like I said, my computer was not purchased for this. That's the dream. We get a few more sponsors, and I'll upgrade to.
Nice.
That's the slow process.
Kyle, have you ever seen the Double Dragon movie?
No, the last I've seen Street Fighter, but not Double Dragon. When did that come out?
Like in the mid to early 90s. With Scott Wolf from
I
Party.
ads for it. Is it any good?
No,